Right now, I've got Scott Boys with me here. He's the CEO of MPX Pharma. Scott, welcome back.
Nice to be back, James.
Scott, let's start off with a conversation about your recently announced acquisition of CanVita. What is the significance of that for the company and for your investors?
And James, we've been trying to break into the Canadian market for a long time. We had an application for our own sound location that goes back about 3 years now.
Wow.
And we had a couple opportunities to participate in the export-import market that we had to pass by because we didn't have that little pink paper, piece of paper, the Canadian LP license.
Okay.
So this opportunity came along. It's a small facility, but it gets us licensed. We hope it'll help us get our secondary license in own sound and get that wrapped up. We were one of the sponsors at the Cannabis Global Conference in Europe last month. This is becoming a global market, and while the U.S. is still our focus and there's still a big land grab going on down there, not to be able to participate in the import-export market, we think would have restricted us our growth in the future. So.
Sure. Okay. So does that, are we to interpret from that you want to focus more on Canadian and external to Europe more so than the U.S.?
No, the U.S. is still our focus. It's still a huge market, but we have the arrangement with Panexia where they're producing medical grade, GMP grade products. Okay. We had opportunities to invest in several Israeli firms that were doing research, but Panexia has already got the products ready for the market. So we've already got the building permits to build a 5,000 square foot lab in Owen Sound that will be producing the Panexia products that we'll sell in Canada and the US under the Salus Pharmaceutical label. We have a lab that we're building out in Arizona as well. So we'll participate in the medical market. We've also got the MPX brand that is we're just exploding within the US, and we want to be able to bring that brand into the Canadian market as soon as the government here starts to broaden its scope of products that will allow to go into the market.
Yeah, okay. So you'd probably be a relatively qualified individual to comment on the product mix going out into the first blush of the recreational rules. Right now there's talk about allowing some edibles a little further down the line, but more or less we're restricted to vapes and that's it. So vapes and dried flower rather. So how do you see that evolving over time?
Well, if the government really wants to kill the black market, it's going to have to give the consumer either medical or recreational forms that they want to buy, or else the black market will continue to exist. And if you look at our mix in the US now, we're less than 40% dried flower, and it's changing quickly. We do shatter, sauce, wax, live resin, vape, of course. We have machineries down there that'll produce vape cartridges, 2,000 an hour. So it's a mass part of the market.
Some of these products are above 90% THC.
That's correct.
And having experimented with some of the more intensive products like that, I question whether or not, once the market and the sophistication of knowledge as to the effect of these higher potency products in the space is, I'm curious as to, how could those be allowed to succeed? I mean, you do one dab of a 90% shatter and you're gone. I mean, you're gone.
It's worse than the effect of 4 martinis.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's also a huge absence as to exactly what the effect of that is on the human organism, and especially with repeated use over time.
But I'm not sure that in Canada we have to go to the extreme that the Americans have gone in the marketplace. But I think you need to have a wider variety of product available if you really want the consumer to buy its product in a regulated market.
Sure. Well, you made a good point before we started the segment that if Canada is serious about stomping out the black market, that they're going to have to offer all these products, because otherwise people will just keep the black market alive because that's the only place to get these
and
products.
Even in the medical market, with the Panexia joint venture, they've got 40 SKUs of products, and the delivery methods are multiple. The types of everything from vaginal suppositories to sublingual tablets. So. And these are all part of the market, and the government's going to have to allow them to be in the market if they really want to.
Yeah. What do you make of some of the 40 amendments that are currently still under debate by the Senate?
Well, some of them I'm glad were killed.
Right.
Specifically, the one about identifying shareholders.
Yeah.
I mean, we have about, last count on our OBO list, about well, on the Noble list, about 15,000. And of course, it's a public company, they change every day. So
Right.
it would be virtually impossible to be able to comply with that.
Yeah, and I would think that contradicts privacy rules.
Of course, that as well, yeah.
Do you think that the labeling rules, I mean, not allowed to identify brand swag, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me struck me as completely sort of out of left field and kind of wingy, because I mean, if you look at the alcohol business, which is the nearest analog to this thing, we got beer trucks rolling down the street with the logo. You've got anything you can put a logo on has a picture of a beer company's stuff on it. So do you see that one flying through?
Well, I know in Arizona, it's a big part of our sales.
Right.
And it's also, when we can't advertise using print media, we can't advertise using electronic media other than the internet.
Right.
It's one of the few ways we have of getting our brand identification out there. So,
sure.
Yeah. I think it'll all evolve.
Yeah.
I mean, sooner or later, it's going to get to the point where it's recognized as a viable industry, and it's going to be subject to the same standards as the other ones. Even the packaging restrictions here, I think, are a little bit restrictive. Even if you want to give contents, if you get into the medicines, you got to have contents of the non-active ingredients as well. So the packaging is going to have to change.
Yeah, no doubt. So then, in terms of the inability, or the province's right to deny the ability to grow homegrown cannabis, which was one of the core planks in the platform to eliminate the black market, do you think there's going to be some compromise on that point?
Well, I think there's two sides to the story. The homegrown market could be abused with multiple plants being grown and then being sold into the black market, and I think that was the fear that the Senate had. But at the same token, I mean, we can make our own beer and wine, so I think there's two sides to the coin. I'm not strongly opinionated one way or the other.
Right. We saw a big raise done by Canopy Growth, $500 million. I mean, really, that's putting the whole cannabis industry on the map globally in the most conservative investment circles now. Do you think that that's going to open up the Canadian market even more? Or do you think that it's the sign, as a lot of people are suggesting, that the market has now sort of peaked out and it's top heavy, and so we're going to see some unwinding? We're starting to see a lot of short positions built up in some of the bigger names.
Well, I'm convinced, and our strategy is built on the fact that there's going to be an oversupply of biomass, of dried flower. So where we originally were planning up to 400,000 square feet in Owen Sound, now our grow there will be minimal. The grow in the Convita operation is small, and we're going to focus on secondary products, distillates and the byproducts of distillates, and on the medical market. We haven't raised much money in Canada. So what happens in the Canadian investor market isn't that critical to us. We've raised most of our money in the United Kingdom.
Oh, is that right? In the United Kingdom?
In the United Kingdom. In fact, of the 100 million we've raised, about 75 million of it was raised through London with European and international investors.
Interesting. Huh. So the rules in London, are they changing?
In terms of?
Well, are they moving towards a recreational regime?
Well, when I was there 3 weeks ago, there's a lot of talk about pushing medical into the market. And typically markets go through two stages, right? We start with the medical market, and this has happened in the US as well as in Canada. And then the recreational movement hits on later. But there is a very active lobby going on in Parliament in the UK to get it legalized for medical use.
Okay, so the whole world's basically moving towards everybody.
When I was at the conference, there was people there from Italy, from Spain, from Portugal, from Poland, from several countries in South America, several African countries. It is a global industry now, and moving just as fast globally as it is in North America.
Right. So I've seen a bunch of companies making moves into Africa on the pretext that Africa is the cheapest place in the world to grow cannabis. I would think it would also be one of the toughest places in the world to organize a sophisticated agricultural crop that is targeting, high THC values. I mean, I could see growing, CBD hemp there, but are they really going to be able to export a high grade?
We've met people from Lesotho. We had some conversations from groups from Zimbabwe. There's pretty large agricultural facilities in most of these countries. They're going to be able to grow flower. A lot of them are talking about producing concentrate, low-grade oil for export. We'll see if that develops. But we're also getting competition out of Peru, Brazil, Colombia.
Right.
So.
Right. All right, Scott, that's a great update. Let's leave it there. We'll come back to you again in a quarter's time and see how you're doing. Thank you once again for joining us. Hey, thanks for watching. Check out one of our other videos here along the side, or subscribe to the channel, or visit us at MidasLetter.com to see our cannabis mini docs. They are something else.